Anyone can wrestle, either poorly or well.
Everyone can do the wrestling moves in 2022. Everyone can do everything.
But you're right. Everybody can wrestle.
Yep, that's right, guys. It doesn't take any skill or anything at all to be a wrestler. Anybody can do it. Welcome back to the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling. We are talking today about the sports entertainment showcase of the Immortals, WrestleMania 38. Night 1 was pretty damn good. Could Night 2 live up to it? We'll see in this review of the show. Of course, before we get into that, to be able to afford to watch all of this stuff all the time, you're going to need some money. So if you're interested in getting your money stuff together, getting your finances in order, I have tons of links down in the description box below for you. You can get free stocks from Robinhood. You can get up to 3 free stocks from Webull that can be worth anywhere from $3,000 to $3,000 a piece. So it's basically like getting free money. So you might as well check that out. You can also get some free points from the Chase Sapphire Preferred or Reserve cards. If you're a big baller, you can get the the Reserve one because it's you get a lot of stuff with those cards. And of course, if you're into cryptocurrency, you can sign up for Coinbase and get yourself some free crypto just by signing up and store it in Vault if you want to get some interest on it. So check out those links down in the description box below. And let's get on now to WrestleMania 38 Part 2. Oh, we got the emotional punch at the beginning. Triple H coming out. It was really cool to see him come out and do his entrance. And as customary, as we've seen other people do, he left his boots in the ring, signifying the end of his career because, Triple H will never wrestle again because of his heart condition, unfortunately. But it was cool to see him. He looked a little bit lighter than what we remember him, but he looked like he was in good spirits. So it was cool to see Triple H and that be his big send-off. As far as the wrestling was concerned, we started out the show with the Raw Tag Team Championships, Team RKBro. Matt Riddle must be happy because of the new policy in WWE revolving marijuana, that it is no longer on the banned substances for WWE. So Matt Riddle, there you go. Too bad RVD didn't have that back in the day. He would have probably been a bigger star and wouldn't have gotten busted so hard in WWE for that whole marijuana thing that he had with Sabu. But that's a story for a retrospective review in the future. But Matt Riddle and Randy Orton defended their tag titles against the Street Profits and Alpha Academy. And I was like, all right, night 2, let's see what they got. Can it hold up to night 1? And yeah, actually it did. Starting off again for another tag team title match. And this one was hella entertaining. And I was like, oh boy, we might do it. We might do 2 good nights of WrestleMania this year. Randy Orton, what can you say? And again, I've said at this point in his career, a couple years ago, I didn't think he was a GOAT, but at this stage in his career, he is so matured into who he is as a character. He is just so good now. Even doing half-ass Randy Orton stuff, he's still good. Riddle is pretty awesome too. Street Profits are awesome. I like the dynamic of Alpha Academy. I think that was the best thing for them to do with Chad Gable and Otis. But at the end, the finish of this was so awesome. So Montez Ford, who has a little bit of heat with Randy Orton, kind of legitimately, because Orton was complaining earlier, like a couple weeks ago, about how the NXT guys couldn't work. And, he did sustain a minor injury from a Montez Ford frog splash or whatever it was that hurt Orton for a bit. He was setting him up for it again, and I'm looking at it like, oh no, he is not going to hit that splash on Orton again. Orton is not taking this again. And sure enough, he didn't, because Matt Riddle hops up to the top rope and hits a beautiful looking RKO on Montez Ford from the top rope. That was huge. The crowd popped massively for that. Then you got Chad Gable trying to come at Orton from the other side. Of course, Orton, as cool as a cucumber, just RKO. 1, 2, 3, match is over. RKBro retains the tag team champ. Boy, RKBro is one of my favorite things in WWE right now, and they just shine in this match. But that wasn't it for this tag match. The Street Profits, being good sports, they came in and they shared a cup, shared the smoke with Team RKBro, and then they invited Gable Steveson into the ring. Gable Steveson, who's been heavily promoted over this WrestleMania as the next big thing, he gets into the ring, and you can be sure that they are going to force Gable Steveson down your throat for the next 5 years until he actually gets over. But they're already starting it here at WrestleMania. So he gets into the ring to do the toast with the Street Profits and RKBro. But then Chad Gable, the mean sport, comes in and smacks the the cup out of his hands. Now, there is something that I saw somebody posting on social media that apparently there's a controversy about Gabe Stevenson and some sort of something that happened in college and was dismissed because of drunkenness. So maybe him holding the Dixie cups and drinking alcohol out of them might not have been the best look here. But that story is not out there. I might look into it at some point in the future. It's not really out there that much in the wrestling community, but be aware that there is some sort of controversy about Gabe Stevenson's background in college and drinking and women. That enough said about that for now, because we're not going to get into it in this video. I haven't studied it enough to know about it, but to know anything more about it. But that was this angle here. So we got some Gable on Gable action as Gable Stevenson and Chad Gable face off for a little bit. Stevenson basically threw Gable around the ring like nothing, and then afterwards celebrated with the Street Profits and RKBro. Randy Orton kept looking in the cup like he didn't know if he was going to drink it or not. Matt Riddle didn't care. Riddle drinks anything. Riddle and Orton are so awesome. I just love them. This is a great way to start off night 2 of WrestleMania 38. Then we had, in the tradition of WrestleManias, in the tradition of Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan, in the tradition of the Giant Gonzalez versus The Undertaker, we had here, which it's two ends of the spectrum on that one. We had here another Giant versus a muscular hero match in the tradition of WrestleMania when Omos took on the almighty Bobby Lashley. And I mentioned some people were talking about the whole Cody thing and Cody coming back and how WWE treats some people coming back. Bobby Lashley is another example of this. Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre in particular, of a person who was in WWE before, didn't quite hit as well as everybody thought he was, left WWE, went and did a bunch of other stuff, came back, and now Bobby Lashley, I think he has been, over the last year or two, this is the best Bobby Lashley we have seen in WWE. He has been absolutely great in the almighty gimmick, the Hurt Business, him and, I almost called him MJF, him and MVP, really good stuff. But here, you had Lashley, the almighty, one of the most powerful guys on the roster, made to look like a monster for the last 2 years, taking on a legit giant in Omos. And the preview that they had in the lead up to this match, Lashley couldn't do anything against him. In this match, Omos just so big, he was beating the crap out of Lashley for most of this match. Lashley would try to make a comeback, Omos would cut him off. Omos still pretty green, botched a couple things in the match, that was noticeable. But I did like the ending. I did like the number of spears, but it only took a couple from Bobby Lashley to get Omos down and get the 1, 2, 3. And somewhat of a surprise win. I thought they might have had Omos go over in this, but Bobby Lashley really probably needed this win more than Omos, needed to be established as this unbeatable force. But, you know, I guess we're not going to get any 15-year undefeated thing with Omos in WWE. Lashley gets the big win here. Good for him. He's back on the winning ways. And, yeah, it wasn't a great match. But, for what it was as long as it needed to be. It did what it needed to do. And they got out of there before they overstayed their welcome. I think whoever is doing the production and the management and the producing on these matches for WrestleMania this year and the booking for it overall did a really good job about not letting these things overstay the welcome, because I think that's one of the big reasons why this WrestleMania seems a lot better than the WrestleManias over the last several years. Is over the last several years, matches like this, they would just linger on too long. They would do too much stupid stuff with it. It just overstayed its welcome. They got in, they got out, they got what they needed to get done, and we were on to the next thing. That's what they needed to do. It was done well. So we're at the third match of the night, and I'm like, all right, so far so good. The first two matches were enjoyable. And then it was Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn, and I'm like, okay, this is the big test of this WrestleMania. If they can make this dumpster fire actually be good, if they can make this work, I will say this is one of the best WrestleManias, certainly of the last 20 years, maybe of all time. And God damn it, did they not find a way to make this work. Unbelievably, Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn had a lot of WrestleMania moments in it. It was a goofy, fun match. It's a comedy match, and they did it well. It was actually fun. I actually was laughing, legitimately laughing at some of the stuff they did in this match. Now, I don't know much about the Jackass crew. I never really watched too much of that stuff. I watched it in college. All the little side characters that Johnny Knoxville has in his traveling carnival of weirdos, that stuff all worked out really well. The big hand, I saw somebody make and I wish the WWE announcers had picked up on this, but there was one part where there was this big gimmick hand that swung out and smacked Sami Zayn in the face, and some brilliant person on social media posted that hand was the child of Mae Young and Mark Henry, and Mark Henry on Twitter actually picked up on it, and he's like, always trying to give to the future of the business. That put it over the top for me, man. This was a lot of fun. It was way better than I thought it was going to be. There were some cringy moments in it where it was like, all right, this is kind of stupid, but it was supposed to be stupid, and they did it well. The mouse traps on the board, which is something we've seen in other wrestling promotions before, and then people clowned it then, but they're praising it in WWE, of course. You know, that's the hypocrisy, unfortunately, of the current day wrestling community. But we've seen mouse traps on boards before in wrestling. But not the way the WWE does it. Shut the fuck up. It's been done before. It's been done effectively before. WWE is doing it too. It's great. What I haven't seen before that WWE has originated is a giant mousetrap in the ring used as a way to pin a wrestler. And that's what we got here. There was a giant mousetrap. Now the contraption broke, but kudos to Johnny Knoxville for improvising on the spot and getting the thing manually to work to trap Sami Zayn. Because if that didn't work at all, the finish of the match would have been screwed, because that was the finish of the match. Zayn gets trapped in a giant mousetrap. Johnny Knoxville gets the pin, and Sami Zayn, usually in times like this, you would say that the wrestler gets hurt when he loses to a celebrity. But in this case, Sami Zayn is not hurt at all. In fact, he's probably elevated by losing in this match to Johnny Knoxville and his crew of morons. So I was like, third match in, they made this dumpster fire actually work. Then we did get to kind of the down part of the night, and I will say this right now, night 2 was not as good as night 1 because of this kind of middle section of the show, but the women's triple, quadruple threat, fatal, for whatever it was, multi-tag match for the women's championship. The match itself, it had a couple good high spots. The stacked suplexes from opposite corners of all the women, that was pretty good. There were a couple things here and there, but this was kind of felt more like one of the weekly show kind of throwaway matches. No disrespect to the performers. They did what they could do, but it wasn't great. The best part of the match actually is Corey Graves on commentary, because of course they have now gone publicly and made it part of the show that he's had this relationship with Carmella and their upcoming wedding and all this other stuff. And Corey Graves on commentary is pretty funny. And when they lose the match, Corey Graves gets one of the best lines, because the other two commentators, Byron and whoever the other random play-by-play guy is, they were clowning the hell out of him. And Corey Graves goes, we have a wedding, we have a honeymoon, we were counting on that WrestleMania check, it's the biggest check of the year. He was doing his best Bobby Heenan WrestleMania 8 shilling for Ric Flair impersonation, which was him, here with Corey Graves shilling for his fiance, obviously Carmella. But that was pretty cool. But that was the best part of the match. The match itself. But I will say the conclusion of the match had some historical significance, because Sasha Banks and Naomi wind up winning and becoming the new tag team champions. Again, I know some people like this match. I wasn't really big wild about this match, but Corey Graves' commentary and the fact that, this is a historic thing, 2 black women being the tag team champions, to go along with Bianca Belair being the Raw Women's Champion now. This is the most black women that have ever had championships in WWE, or I think probably any wrestling promotion. So hats off to that, recognizing. And it's not like, this isn't a token thing. This isn't like, oh, they're just doing it to do it. No. Naomi, we're talking about Naomi, we're talking about Sasha Banks, we're talking about Bianca Belair. Those are 3 of the best women's wrestlers in the world. I don't like saying earn it or deserved it or whatever, but they are credible, I'll put it that way, as champions. They should be champions. They are talented enough to be champions, and that it's being recognized now is a really cool thing. And hats off to WWE for doing that, for recognizing not just because they were black, but because they actually are 3 of the best women wrestlers in the world. Awesome. Then things picked up a bit. We got Edge versus AJ Styles, and this was one of the matches that I was looking forward to the most at this WrestleMania when the card was announced. And for me, it delivered. This, again, it's kind of like the previous tag match. Some people like that tag match. I wasn't too wild about it. This match, I loved this match. But I saw a lot of other people didn't love it so much. But for me, this was fantastic. AJ coming out. Now, there was a big controversy because AJ came out and they focused on the fact that he had this kind of bleeding cut on the side of his face. And people were wondering why. It didn't take long for the internet to figure it out. And that it was a pyro incident that had scarred up AJ. So, once again, WrestleMania pyro wreaking havoc. You know, I talk about the production of WWE being over the top. This is not the first time. This is becoming quite a frequent occurrence. Because I remember, what was it? SummerSlam, something caught on fire. WrestleMania, something caught. The Undertaker caught on fire from pyro. Now AJ Styles gets burned up and cut up from pyro. Okay, WWE, be safe with the pyro, please. But AJ comes to the ring. Then we get this amazing entrance from Edge, who's got a banger of an entrance music. I got to get that one down. That's joining my wrestling music playlist as cool wrestling music that you can actually listen to and doesn't feel embarrassed to listen to it. That track that Edge has now is awesome. And him coming out on that throne with the fire and everything else. Yes, I get Malachi Black and House of Black from AEW vibes. Got to mention that because it's true. This is what happens when you have multiple big-time wrestling companies. You're going to get... We had this back in the day. I had this as a kid. You know, WCW had Sting. WWF had the Ultimate Warrior. You know, WWF had Demolition. WCW had the Road Warriors. You're going to get that when you have more than one Major League Wrestling company. And there's going to be comparisons, especially with what happened at the end of this match, between what Edge is building and Malachi Black and AEW with the House of Black. This entrance was fire, literally. The match was pretty good. It was a slow burn match. It built and built and built. I liked it. But then the conclusion was interesting. AJ Styles goes up to the top rope. This is a deep cut for New Japan fans because AJ should know better than to fall for this. Because AJ had Kenny Omega do the same thing to Kota Ibushi in the world title match that he had in New Japan. This is pretty much the same kind of scenario without the subtext, obviously, that Omega and Kota Ibushi had at the time because of their history, but because there's no history here. But Damian Priest is at ringside, but Damian Priest shows up at ringside, and it's the same scenario. AJ stops what he's doing for a split second to look at Damian Priest, and then goes back to go attack Edge, gets caught with a spear, loses the match. Again, it was very similar to something AJ had done, in an angle AJ did with Kota Ibushi and Kenny Omega in New Japan many, many years ago. So it was the same kind of finish. And then afterwards, Damian Priest gets in the ring, and this whole light dark thing with Damian Priest has finally now seemed to have gone to the dark side, and him and Edge kind of grin at each other with these sick sadistic laughs. So Edge is building a faction. You can look at this as the House of Edge. I think we're probably going to wind up looking at it more like Edge is revitalizing the Brood, which would be cool if they call it the Brood or the new. Don't call it the new Brood, just call it the Brood. That with Damian Priest and whoever else they put in this thing, that could be pretty damn cool. Edge is evolving as a character again. He is following the Jericho tradition of constantly evolving your character from him being in the Brood and the puffy shirts to him being kind of the jokey, awesome-tacular kind of dude kind of guy in the 5-second poses, to him being the rated R superstar, to him just being Edge, to him now being the grizzled veteran Edge, and now this return to the Brood Edge. Edge is one of the best wrestlers of all time. And again, like I said, much like Jericho, he's constantly reinventing himself. Then we get to the dud of the night, and yeah, it was too good to be true that the whole show was gonna be, both nights were gonna be great from top to bottom, and this was the big dud. This was a match that was supposed to be on the first night, got pushed off the first night, and now was put on the second night. But Sheamus and Ridge Holland took on the New Day. Some cool stuff here. The New Day, Xavier and Kofi Kingston coming out. They did do a recap about Big E's broken neck injury. So Xavier and Kofi came out wearing their versions of the Big E singlet, which I thought was pretty cool as an homage to their fallen friend. This Butch thing, I'm going to give it some time. It might grow on me. But I see now why they did it, because Pete Dunne never looked like a small guy to me before, but when he's standing next to Ridge Holland and Sheamus, he looks like a small guy. Plus, it seems like he's thinned out a lot. He's very lean. He's a lot leaner than I remember him back when I used to watch NXT UK a lot. So he's definitely leaned out, very muscular, very swimmer's build kind of now. But they're portraying him like this little scrappy guy who's just can't. Sheamus can barely control him from wanting to fight people in the middle of their match, which would get them disqualified. But he's always running in and running around and wanting to fight everybody and all this stuff. So I guess that's what they're going to do with him. That's going to be the gimmick of Butch. Again, right now I'm not wild about it, but I'm going to give it some time and see if it can be good. He said it was one of the names that he picked. He gave them when they said they were going to rename him. He didn't think they were going to pick it, but they did. They did. So it's on Pete Dunne. It's his fault that he's called Butch because he gave him the name and they picked it. The match itself was like, 2 minutes long? Not even that. New Day loses. They look weak. It just wasn't a good. This is what I mentioned before about the kind of crap they've done over the last several years of WrestleMania that we didn't like. This is one of those kind of matches. But fortunately, this year, this wasn't. This, in prior WrestleManias over the last couple of years, almost every match had some silly bullshit like this in it. This was pretty much one of the few matches in this year's WrestleMania that was like this. That was a dud. So, yeah, it was a dud, but we can forgive the rest of the show and it was only 2 minutes. So let's wipe that out the way and move on to the next thing. Then one of the craziest thing. Now, we've gone through Cody Rhodes showing up. Cody Rhodes doing his full-on AEW entrance in WWE, which is crazy. We've seen people unfortunately be injured. We've seen some crazy high spots and matches. Amazing match between Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch. The craziness of the Johnny Knoxville Sami Zayn match, but this took the cake for me. Pat McAfee taking on Austin Theory. Again, on paper, match I probably wouldn't be that interested in. Once we got to Showtime, and kudos to Pat McAfee for hyping this up during his because he was doing commentary on both nights, and then he left. Byron Saxton filled his spot with Michael Cole to do commentary on these matches. So Pat McAfee comes out to the Dallas cheerleaders, which was interesting because he didn't play for them, but and they did a little kick thing in his entrance that was kind of cute. But he comes out to the Seven Nation Army song from the White Stripes. Now, as a Baltimore Ravens fan, I took a little exception to that because about 10 years ago, it was the Baltimore Ravens. We were doing the Seven Nation Army thing. That was our thing. Oh. That was a Baltimore Ravens thing. We did steal it from European football, but we were one of the first NFL teams to really adopt that as a chant for our team. When the Ravens started doing good and when it looked like they were winning, we would do the It was a Baltimore thing. Now other teams have stolen it, so as a Baltimore Ravens fan, I'm a little pissed about that. But that aside, it was a cool entrance for Pat McAfee. Vince came out at the beginning to the No Chance in Hell, announced Austin Theory as a future WWE Universal Champion, which a lot of people picked up on that, isn't there a unification match tonight? When did you not call it the WWE Universal Championship if they're unifying the championships tonight? So we'll see what happens. Again, we're going to have to tune into Raw or see the clips from Raw to find out what they do now that the championships are unified after WrestleMania. This match was pretty good. Pat McAfee, much like Logan Paul the night before, showed that he's a celebrity that can actually go in the ring.
You're right. Everybody can wrestle.
Of course, McAfee's been a WWE fan. He's been a WWE sweat. He is a WWE sweaty, and he's been a WWE sweaty for most of his life. And this was a dream of his come true. So for that, I'm happy for him. And Pat McAfee is actually pretty good. I don't agree with a lot of the dumb, boneheaded nonsense he says. I do think he's a bit of a meathead, and he can be obnoxious at times, but he's funny, and he's smart, and he gets it, and he's very good at wrestling. So he was doing stuff. He busted out a hurricanrana at one point in time. He went for a big old swanton bomb, completely missed it, sold out on it completely, and missed it. It looked painful. But at the end, he did get the win, with Michael Cole cheerleading him from ringside, another announcer cheerleading a wrestler on this night. And that was pretty cool. And I thought that was going to be the end of it. And I was like, all right, that was a good match. That was good. That was entertaining. But then we weren't done. Vince is outside the ring with Austin Theory, chastising Austin Theory a bit. And then he's looking up at Pat. And then Pat starts talking crap to Vince McMahon. So Vince, I'm like, they're not going to do this. Vince McMahon is 73, 74 years old. Vince starts taking off his jacket. Then he puts it back on. He's like, no, I'm teasing you guys. He's like, and then you see that look at his face. He's like, wait a minute. That son of a bitch isn't gonna talk to me. I created WrestleMania. So Vince takes off and then he reveals that he's got the Vince McMahon ring attire, which is his black wife beater underneath his suit, and he gets in the ring. A referee comes down, and it takes him a long time before the referee started the match because they had to do all the shenanigans of beating up Pat McAfee before the match of Austin Theory and McMahon double teaming him for a little bit. And then the bell rang, and we're like, the rumors are true. We are going to get Pat McAfee versus Vince McMahon. It is now official. That did happen at WrestleMania. McMahon punts a football. It looked terrible, but he punted a football at Pat McAfee in his head. McAfee is overselling, which, you know, it takes you out of it a little bit. But then again, this whole thing is a joke. But it takes you out of it a little bit, the fact that McAfee was doing all this acrobatic stuff and beating the living snot out of a much younger, much more capable, much more athletic Austin Theory. But here's 74-year-old Vince McMahon who can barely move in the ring, who's whooping his ass. And at the end, Vince does get the pin. He beats Pat McAfee. McAfee being the complete shill and WWE sweaty that he is. Laid down and did the jobs for Vince McMahon, which I'm sure he's happy about. And that was the end of that. I was like, okay, because this went on way too long. And then the after the match beatdown looked really bad. But then the glass broke. And Stone Cold Steve Austin came out to save this segment, which looked like it was about to go downhill. Austin comes out, stuns the living crap out of Austin Theory, who sells it like a champ. And then we get to the beer. We got Austin and McMahon. Once again, Austin and McMahon at WrestleMania. Oh my God. They're not shaking hands this time. Austin comes, and we all know what's coming. We all know Vince is going to get the stunner. But we were not prepared for the stunner. It's so bad. It's so bad, it's good. That's what it is. It's so bad, it's good. Austin and McMahon drink the beers. We know it's coming. Austin kicks McMahon in the stomach. So McMahon collapses at that moment, forgetting that he has to take the stunner, so he needs to stand back up. So Austin tries to lift him up. McMahon staggers backwards into the... I mean, that must be some potent beer, that IPA that Stone Cold has, because Vince looked like he was drunk. He bounces, wobbles off the ropes, comes up to Austin. Austin is laughing his ass off, and then Austin hits the stunner, and McMahon takes it just as horribly as he always does. Oh my God, it was, like I said, it's so bad, it's good. I have to say this, as big and powerful and strong as Vince McMahon is, because he works out a lot, he is one of the most unathletic, uncoordinated people He is just not very athletic. And every time, even if it was 20 years ago, whenever it was, Vince talks this big game about how big and bad he is, but he's probably good in close quarters fighting. If it's like a knuckle, if you're sitting in a chair and sitting next to him and he smacks you, it's probably going to hurt. But if you actually get in an actual fight with him, I don't know. Vince said people said he can fight. I don't see a coordinated fighter. I've never seen it. I'm not the toughest guy in the world. I've done some mixed martial arts and stuff. I can handle myself. I don't know if I'd be afraid to fight Vince McMahon. I don't know. I don't think I'd be afraid to fight Vince McMahon, but whatever. But the whole thing together was good. It looked like it was going to fall apart, as WWE want to do at times, but Austin coming in and saved it. I am not going to forget it. And then it's all capped off by the fact that then McAfee comes in the ring. He celebrates with Stone Cold. Then Stone Cold, of course, stuns McAfee. McAfee flops out the ring. And then they get the camera shot on him. He's on the floor after being stunner, pouring beer into his mouth. Oh my God, this is great. I've been on the fence about McAfee for so long, but at this point in time, I am a Pat McAfee fan. Again, he's still probably going to say some boneheaded nonsense that's going to make me roll my eyes from time to time. But he is just a lot of fun. Look, if you're going to give WWE over to anybody, give it over to McAfee. Let him run it. He is good. He is really good. And he gets sports entertainment. He understands it. The style of wrestling that WWE does, the sports entertainment style, he understands it. He gets it. And he's one of the best at it. But now it's time for the main event. And again, looking back on the past several years of WrestleManias, this main event felt like a WrestleMania main event. This is the first main event that felt this level. Now, ironically enough, The last WrestleMania I enjoyed as much as I've enjoyed this year's WrestleMania was also headlined by Brock versus Roman. That was WrestleMania 31, the one where Seth did the cash in at the end and won, which was a great ending. And that first match impressed me. The middle match that they had a couple years ago at WrestleMania was terrible on all fronts. Nobody, the fans, WWE fans, people who weren't WWE fans, the Brock, Roman, Vince, nobody liked that last WrestleMania match that Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar did. And when they announced they were doing yet a third one here this year's WrestleMania, last year, a lot of people were moaning and groaning about it. Me too. I was like, okay, well, I wasn't groaning about it. I was like, all right, well, whatever. It's WWE, whatever. But the build to it and the fact that the everything leading up in WrestleMania this weekend to this match put people in a good mood that we were all willing to give this a try. Plus, it's to unify the Universal and World Championships, which we've been talking they should have been doing a long time ago. So here we go. Roman Reigns comes out, pyro everywhere, fireworks outside the arena, CGI, ugly. I do not like that VR stuff that they do, but whatever. Hopefully it gets better in the future because it looks like, it just looks dumb to me, but that's just me. But Roman's entrance is always awesome. He's got so much just presence about him now coming to the ring. And I said this on Twitter. Roman Reigns, they finally got it. It took a lot of years. It took 3 matches against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. But now, Roman Reigns is actually the megastar that they tried to present him as for years and years and years when he wasn't. He is now the star that they were trying to tell us he was years ago. Now he is that guy. And this is pretty good. And it's just, and the thing with Roman, it's just good booking. It's the 2 things that everybody's been saying. You got to book him well, and they have. This championship reign has been amazing and has just done nothing but elevate him and elevate him and elevate him. And on top of that, he's himself. He's not doing suffering succotash stuff. He's not pandering. He's being cool, calm. I'm the coolest dude here, Roman Reigns. And that works. We've been saying it for the longest time. They finally caught on to it 2 years ago, and it has just worked amazing. Roman Reigns has been one of the best things. And God, if you go back 4 years ago to anybody to say 4 years ago that Roman Reigns, unless you were a WWE sweaty, everybody else would not say that Roman Reigns was the best thing in WWE. But for the last 2 years, Roman Reigns has been the best thing in WWE. And on top of that, then we get Brock Lesnar coming out, who, another person that fans booed, couldn't stand, part-time champion, he doesn't care, yada, yada, yada. He's got the same moves over and over again. He came out with presence. So this finally felt like after all this time, this match felt like the way it should feel. The rest of this 2 nights of WrestleMania has been mostly great. You guys cannot screw this up. And I don't think they screwed it up. I think they did a good job. Yes, it was a lot of the same stuff that they've done before. I think the WrestleMania 31 match was a lot better. But the big conclusion here, with Roman finally getting a win, there was a lot of finisher spamming in the match. But the crowd was into this match. They weren't booing. They weren't heckling. I was into this match. You could tell Brock and Roman were into this match. Now, I do hear that Roman did have a separated shoulder because of the Kimura Brock put on him for the finish of the match, or towards the finish of the match. We'll see more about that as the news comes out today about WrestleMania and the aftermath. But Roman Reigns does win, and he becomes the unified WWE Universal World Heavyweight Champion, however they're gonna call it, whatever they're gonna call it, and ends the show holding up both belts. And we go off the air, and I said, standing ovation for WWE, man. You got to give it up to him. Only the most ardent hater is going to not admit that this was a damn good WrestleMania. Again, I'm not a big WWE fan. I don't like the way that they do their product now. The weekly shows I still think aren't really good. But as far as this in a vacuum, WrestleMania 38, one of the best of all time. Probably going to be one of the best pay-per-views, if not the best pay-per-view of the year. We'll see what happens come the end of the year. And this is just good all around. I am happy as a pro wrestling fan, an actual pro wrestling fan, not a fan of a company. I am happy now that the 3 major companies, in my opinion, in my eyes, New Japan, AEW, and WWE, the 3 major wrestling companies that all do different variations of wrestling. One does sports entertainment, one does a hybrid, and one does old school pro wrestling. They are all look like they're all creatively going on an upward trajectory. So I am happy as a wrestling fan because now I have different kinds of wrestling to watch, and the different companies that are doing these different styles of wrestling are doing the different styles very, very well. We might be in for a renaissance period content-wise in the wrestling world, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's see what happens. WWE's had this before, and then a month later, they're back to the same crap they were doing before. So let's hope that this is a turnaround period creatively for WWE. But that's my views on it. I want to know what you guys think. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until next time, I will see you guys here for more news, rumors, and reviews here on the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling. Have a good day.